I don't have very many early memories, but my early memories of Hammersmith were of a council house, bit of a dirty flat, noisy neighbours. And then I moved here and everyone was nice. It's a quiet place, it's green, everyone's friendly, smiley.
And where's your family from?
My family from Iran. No, my dad grew up in Isfahan, which is one of the old capitals. And my mother grew up in Tehran, which is the new capital. And while my dad was in the University of Tehran studying, his sister was teaching with my mum's aunt. So they kind of got to know each other's families. And my mum's aunt suggested to my dad that he come over one day and just have a meal. And they met. You know, the sort of circles that they were in, it wasn't that traditional. It wasn't like the family had to meet the family before. My family's quite big, so quite a lot of my dad's family is still in Iran, and then quite a lot of them are just scattered around the world, in England and Australia and Scotland and America and Sweden and Switzerland. And my mum's family, I think the majority, is still in Iran. Iran is very different to England, and the Iran of today is very different to the Iranian culture that I was sort of brought up with, because my parents left not very long after the revolution, and the Iranian culture that I was familiar with had become so different. I mean, it was sort of frozen 30 years ago, right? So that was the Iranian culture that brought me up. And then when I first went back to Iran, you know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, Iran was a completely different place. So for me, that was the biggest shock. It wasn't that Iran was so different to England and I wasn't expecting it. I always knew Iran was different to England because I always knew my parents are different to my English friends' parents, or my family are different from my English friends' family. What the shock was that the Iran that I went to when I was 12 was so different to the Iran that my parents had described to me. The Iran that, you know, the Iranians I met on the street were not like the Iranians that came to my house. I do sometimes just go to Iran, see everyone, have a great time for about 2 weeks, and then not see them again for a year. But then there are some years where my contact with, you know, a cousin or an aunt or an uncle keeps up for the whole year. So I'll speak to them maybe once a month, once every 2 months, or we'll email. I just had a telephone call from my gran. She was just, you know, calling to say hey. The older I get, the more I keep in touch with individual members of my family in Iran. When I was younger, it was just, you know, have a trip, see everyone, like get your fill, and then just come back to England. They prefer to use telephone. They don't really get the feeling of speaking to someone over GChat. I mean, I'm not sure whether we do, but it satisfies us in any case. I'm satisfied talking to some of my friends, you know, over in the United States over GChat, but you know, my gran just isn't satisfied talking to me like that, and I understand. I mean, even the telephone is impersonal. I mean, if you speak to someone in Tehran, a young person in Tehran, someone like me, I mean, I'm not someone from Tehran, but someone like me or you, then it wouldn't be very different to talking to some young person in London. No, not necessarily. Depends what you're talking about. But if you're just talking about, you know, where you want to get to in life, no, not necessarily. If you talk to someone from the desert and compare it to someone in Iran, well, yeah. But that's probably true if you spoke to, you know, a farmer boy in Wales, and you compared a conversation with them, with a conversation to someone who lives in Belsize Park in London.
So the dreams and the ambitions are the same, you think?
The dreams and ambitions are the same. The constraints are different. It's not like the internet is all of this technology is something that the West has kind of had and now sort of giving as a gift to all these like Neanderthals in the East, where they're like, oh my God, we have the internet. Let's, you know, it's exactly the same. It just sort of creeps into your life. Before you know it, you're using it all the time, just as we do here. It's exactly the same thing over there. It's no different. Probably ever since I've started watching the news, I've been interested in all the, I don't know how to put it, all the different international conflicts that relate in one way or another to England or to Iran. Palestine and Israel relates to both. If I'm going to be honest, I would argue with my dad when I was young over politics and everything. But when I then speak to my friends, I'd find myself just giving them what he told me. So I just thought, he was right. Everything he said was probably true. He was so much more knowledgeable than me. I mean, I was just however young, 10 to 15. I just didn't know what was going on in any political issue, and he seemed to know everything. And, I looked up to him. So even though I might learn something about, I don't know, communism one day from him, and I'd be arguing with him while I was learning about it, I'd then the next day go into school and spout out everything he might have said about it, good or bad. My gran taught me to play backgammon.
Okay, and is that an experience that kind of you treasure, and how did it happen?
Yeah, I do treasure that memory. We were in Scotland at the time. It was a family holiday. Almost every member of my dad's immediate family were there, and it was just a reunion. And there was a big tournament going on amongst us all, and we were all competing, but I couldn't play, and I found that quite frustrating. And so my gran saw that, and we kind of went aside and sat in a quiet room, and she very, very patiently taught me the rules and just, showed me the basics. And I was saying my gran's, one of her best skills, qualities, her patience. Well, I suppose I'm just less interested in one person was shot here, or someone sprained their ankle over there, or it's more interesting to see in 20 pages to read something about 5 years of politics. I felt like my dad knew everything there was to know about politics. So we'd have a conversation, he'd tell me about something, and even though we might be arguing about it, I would find myself the next day basically spouting out whatever he was saying. It was very nice and a bit strange in all the ways that I sort of expected. But the education was very different to what I expected. I don't know why, but I just thought, you get to Oxford, and then these tutors would just give you the freedom to read whatever you want, write whenever you want, think about whatever you fancy. It was nothing like that. It was a training. It was intellectual boot camp. You read these 5 books in 2 days, and then you write an essay in half a day, and then you go into tutorial. And even if you don't know what you're talking about, you just argue. You learn what is a good argument and what is a bad argument, and you learn how to persuade people. And that's it, even when you don't know what you're talking about. And then tomorrow you do it again. It was tough, but it was a great training. I always saw a good education as a ticket to exciting opportunities when I was older. So no matter what else I was interested in at the time, from the age of about 15, I knew that if I maintained a high standard at school or college or university, then I was never going to close any doors. I was going to keep my options open, and that was the reason why. That's the reason why I would work hard. And then sometimes you're lucky enough to actually get interested in what you're doing, and then. But I can be a bit lazy sometimes when I know it's work and I have to do it. Even when I'm interested in it, I can let it fall to the wayside. But I paid attention in school, and I paid attention in university because I knew doing well meant a bright future.